What is up, everybody? What is up, everybody? My name is JeffLightsy Jr. here with the Black Boss Channel and Victor Formation. Thank you guys for tuning in. As you come into the room, I told you guys I'm getting back to live shows. I'm getting back to live streaming with you all. Drop your comments in the chat. We'll be responding to as many as we can. But today we're here to talk about some news out of Tennessee State. Tennessee State will play North Dakota State, or at least according to the reports. According to the reports, Coach Eddie George, the Tennessee State Tigers, will travel to Fargo and also host a game in Nashville against FCS powerhouse North Dakota State. Yes, Tennessee State wants all the smoke. Drop and shout out to Joseph. Drop what city you're from. Drop where you're from. And what you think, and we'll get right back to it after the bumper. This is gonna be a good one, and why it affects or does it affect Jackson State? Why am I even bringing Jackson State up? Let's talk about it after the bumper. Stay tuned. What is good people? What is good people? Jeff Lightsy Jr. here with the Black Boss Channel. Thank you guys for tuning in. Like I said, drop where you're from, hit that thumbs up button. And this is all good. Okay, I see some of your comments. Keep dropping your comments in the comment section. Keep dropping your comments in the comment section. We'll be pulling them up. But we're going to talk about what we came here for. That's Tennessee State is playing North Dakota State. According to the reports, this was the original tweet put out by a man by the name of Dom Izzo. Dom Izzo put on Twitter just in to W Day Sports. North Dakota State Deputy Athletic Director Todd Phelps says the Bison and Tennessee State are in talks for a potential. Now, the deal isn't done, but it looks like it's heading that direction. A potential home and home series. North Dakota State is in talks with a potential football game in Nashville against Tennessee State. Now, that was the headline. That grabbed all the attention. That is newsworthy because Coach Eddie George, is showing once again, man, TSU ain't ducking no one. They're not ducking any smoke. They're not ducking any perennial powerhouses, any big time games. Ezekiel says so. So we're gonna tell you why all of this matters. And so let's get into the article itself. Let's go to the article that they put out, and let's read a bit of it. It says Tennessee State in talks a football game in Nashville against Tennessee State. The Bison will host the Tigers in Fargo in 2024. North Dakota State may be heading to the Volunteer State. Deputy Athletic Director Todd Day tells W Day Sports Director Dom Izzo that the Bison are in talks to play Tennessee State in a home and home series for the 24 and 25 seasons. The Bison would host the Tigers at Gate City Bank Field and Fargo Dome in 2024, then would play Tennessee State at Nissan Stadium in Nashville, the home of the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee State is a member of the OVC located in Nashville. The Tigers are coached by Heisman Trophy winner Eddie George, who took over the job in 2021. Phelps added that he reached out to Power 5 schools, Utah and South Carolina, for games in 2025, but was denied each time. Talked about that. Over 35,000 fans filled the Target Center in 2019 when the Bison beat Butler 57-10. The home game against TSU would complete the 2024 schedule. So North Dakota State, if this goes through, 2024 schedule done, which already includes FBS games, a game at Colorado, a road game at East Tennessee State, and a home game at with Towns in the 25 schedule. Still has an opening at 12 games, etc., etc. So, what is the significance of all of this? Why does any of this matter? It says, will that game take place at JSU versus TSU since we aren't playing the Southern Heritage Classic? That is yet to be seen, because even though Eddie George Coach Eddie George has already said we should probably be done with the Southern Heritage Classic too, as of now, there's no talks about their contract and what's going to. We'll probably know more about that after this year's game is played, about Tennessee State TSU's future in the Southern Heritage Classic. But that is a good question, Juwan. I don't know if this will take the place of it, but it will be a non-conference game, which is what the Southern Heritage Classic is for TSU and for JSU. So we'll have to see what happens moving forward. 24 and 25 and what Tennessee State decides to do in 23 when it comes to the Southern Heritage Classic. Chris says, I'd go to that game. I want to see North Dakota State in person. A lot of people do. North Dakota State coming to Nashville is a big deal on multiple levels, and we're going to talk about why. Said, how is them not ducking anyone going to put butts in their seats? So let's talk about it. Okay, so let's rewind for a second. We're talking about TSU. They scheduled this game, or it looks like they're on the precipice of scheduling a game against North Dakota State for the 24 and 25 season. Why does this make sense for Tennessee State? Let's see. So Lawrence says the Southern Heritage Classic is over after this year. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like because Coach Eddie George has already kind of dispelled it. Coach Prime has already said, and we're done with it. So we'll see what the Southern Heritage Classic looks like in 23, if it is dissolved completely or what. But let's talk about Tennessee State and why this game makes sense for them. It makes sense on a number of reasons. One, Coach Eddie George has already proven that he is not ducking smoke from anybody and that he wants big marquee matchups for Tennessee State. And it makes a lot of sense why he would want marquee matchups for his program. When I say marquee matchups, that means taking on some of the best teams, not only in FCS, but also in FBS. Coach Eddie George obviously is a Heisman Trophy winner. He obviously was one of the best players to ever play at Ohio State. He obviously was a first-round pick, multiple-time Pro Bowler, played for the Tennessee Titans in the Ring of Honor, all those things. So he knows what big-time marquee matchups can do for a program, even if you lose. Even if you lose. Because right now at Tennessee State, they have attendance problems and they have notoriety problems that he is fixing. He is currently under construction. The attendance problems, I think they'll get that fixed once they start having home games on campus and not at Nissan Stadium. A lot of folks, I've talked to a lot of people from TSU. They said a lot of the attendance problems comes from the fact that it doesn't have a college football feel. It doesn't have a college football atmosphere at Nissan Stadium as opposed to when they were hosting games on the campus of Tennessee State. So once the stadium renovations, apparently there's some stadium renovations taking place. Once that is fixed, I think that will help with the attendance problems. But until those attendance problems are salvaged, you have to get people excited about your football team. And so therefore, that means going out and recruiting a good team, putting a good product on the field. Coach George is in the midst of doing that. He went out and got his quarterback that I think is going to be a rock star. If you don't know the name of Draylon Ellis yet, you're going to know of Mr. Ellis by the end of the season. Draylon Ellis, I think, is a complete stud at the quarterback position, something that they didn't have last year. No offense to the quarterbacks they had in their room last year. They didn't have a guy of his talent. So that is the first thing. He's recruiting better talent. Second thing, by recruiting better talent, you hope to put a better product on the field. And the fact that Tennessee State isn't in an HBCU conference, their games aren't as exciting. So, their games in the OVC were against Eastern Kentucky and Murray State and some different OVC schools, and that doesn't attract the HBCU crowd, right? Like the crowds they get at the Southern Heritage Classic or the crowds they get when they play non-conference HBCU teams are nothing like the crowds they get when they play in-conference games, whether it's at home or away. And so Coach George, him being the name that he is, two, recruiting the better player, hopefully putting the better product on the field and creating these marquee matchups is how you garner a buzz around your program. He did it earlier this year when he being Coach George, when he announced the game against Notre Dame. Notre Dame, this will be the first time that they ever play an HBCU team. And the first HBCU team they play is TSU. Remember back in April, Notre Dame football to play first ever HBCU foe in Tennessee State in 2023. So think about it. In 2023, he will be playing Notre Dame. And then in 24 and 25, he'll be playing the best of the best of FCS in North Dakota State. That is huge for the Tennessee State football program, especially hosting a North Dakota State that'll draw a crowd because you're going to be able to measure your program, how your program would fare in an FCS playoff type of team with the best of the best as far as the FCS playoffs go. You get a good measuring stick. That all makes perfect sense for Coach George and Tennessee State. You get a proper measuring stick because guess what? At the end of Tennessee State's football season, you know what they don't get? They don't get a Celebration Bowl. They don't get a chance to play another black college for the quote-unquote black college national championship, which I love. But Tennessee State, by being in the OVC, you don't get a bite at that apple. You don't get a shot at that. You don't get a chance to compete for that. So what you can make a case for is a FCS playoff berth. What you can make a case for is playing in the FCS playoffs, which you can make a case for. And if you're able to beat a North Dakota State, is a shot at the FCS playoffs, and rightfully so say, hey, we deserve, we belong, we need a spot in those playoffs. And you make your case for that because you don't get a Celebration Bowl like a Jackson State, like a Grambling, or like a Morgan State, or a team out of the MEAC. You don't get those a South Carolina State, etc. So that all makes perfect sense for me to why TSU would measure themselves against a North Dakota State, because it's a win-win for them. There's a no-lose situation for Coach George and TSU playing North Dakota State that you can't lose. You measure yourself against the best when it comes to FCS playoffs. You measure yourself against one of the best teams in all of FCS football, the premier program in FCS football. So you can't lose. There's literally can't lose. North Dakota State struggles scheduling FBS programs because they're so good. Shout out to Blue. He's in here talking about it. The folks told them. And so Blue brings up a good point because they said they wanted a destination game, something to get their kids up for. The fact that playing in an NFL stadium is something that North Dakota State can sell to their fans and sell to their program. They're playing against a team who I think by 2024 will be a damn good team in Tennessee State. They're going to be playing a good team in the FCS. You also get a travel game to a destination city, Nashville, a destination stadium, Titan Stadium, Nissan Stadium, against a team that I think will be pretty good, but in a dissolving, kind of dying conference. Now, here is where, so shout out to Blue for also mentioning them. Because there's no lose to me in Tennessee State. Tennessee State, if you lose, you're supposed to lose. If you win, you etch yourself as one of the premier programs in FCS. You etch yourself as getting a big win over a premier program in FCS, and you make a bigger case for being in the FCS playoffs. So there's no lose there for Tennessee State. There's no lose. So why do we even bring up Coach Prime and the JSU Tigers? Well, this is why. One of the premier FCS guys, a premier FCS analyst, and Mr. Sam Herder, who I know he gets a lot. I know he talks FCS football is one of the top dogs as far as covering FCS. He did put out this tweet though after the original tweet talking about North Dakota State scheduling, or the reports look like they're going to schedule Tennessee State. He put this tweet out there. RIP to Dom's mentions if/when Jackson State fan sees this. Now, and then he went on to tweet this. He says, by the way, I get North Dakota State is probably treating the road side of this potential home game as a destination game at the NFL. This is what Blue tweeted, which is where Tennessee State mostly plays home games. But JSU would move the needle a bit more nationally. No offense to TSU, which he is correct. JSU would move the needle more nationally. That isn't a debate. The question is, and here's what I point out. At this moment, so let's think about this. What would be the benefit? Because you got to put yourself in Coach Prime and JSU shoes. What is the benefit to playing North Dakota State in what would have been 2024 and now potentially in 2025? What would be the benefit for Jackson State? Would it be, and this is a serious question, so anybody can answer. I'm looking at your comments now. Would the benefit and I'm just throwing this out there hypothetically, would the benefit be to measure yourself against one of the best schools in all of FCS? That would be a benefit. You get your chance, because by this time, North Dakota State will be an umpteenth time FCS champion. So would it be to measure yourself against the best of the best in the FCS? Possibly. Would it be to say that you get to go and play in the environment up there in Fargo, North Dakota? Maybe that's a benefit. I don't know, a hostile environment, taking 35,000, because all 35,000 would show up for that game. I don't know how well the JSU fans would travel up to Fargo, but 35,000 will be in that stadium if Jackson State showed up to play with Deion Sanders as head coach. And, so there's that. Chris McKay says that big NFL scout game. Yes, you could do it as a scout game. Blue says, well, it's Shadour's senior season, so it'd be good tape to see him against one of the best defenses in the country. Yes, that is true, Blue. Shout out to you for pointing that out. So, so we're coming up with some reasons. Yes. So let's make a hypothetical. Say if you played a game in 2025, which like Blue said would be Shadour's senior year, and say you beat North Dakota State, you would silence a lot of your FCS critics that say you don't play good FCS teams outside of the SWAC schools. And even if you opt for the Celebration Bowl over the FCS playoffs, if you played North Dakota State in 2025, you could say, hey, we're not going to the playoff, but hell, we already beat the champion or the team we think is going to win a championship. So we're just as good as any other program in the FCS. You could have that. So those are some of the biggest benefits. Though in North Dakota State is an established program, and they are the creme de la creme when it comes to FCS programs. I mean, nobody has done it better over the last umpteenth years than North Dakota State. But and here's the thing, and this is the thing, yeah. So this was Sam Herder, and Sam Herder does a good job covering FCS. This was his thing, and I didn't see very many Jackson State fans in the mentions when it came to this tweet. But one thing that I will say, and I'm going to just be flat out honest with you. If Jackson State played North Dakota State tomorrow, North Dakota State would probably win by 2 touchdowns. And that's just from the last that I saw of Jackson State. And even with the added talent, the North Dakota State program is well-oiled, well-built with great players. And they would beat Jackson State probably by 2 touchdowns. Now, by 2025, I think that is a totally different conversation. Because by 2025, we're talking about in 3 full seasons. So you would have the 22 season, the 23 season, and the 24 season before this could realistically happen. And by 2025, I think the program that Deion Sanders is building right now at Jackson State would beat North Dakota State. Now, this is me projecting. This is me guessing. This is me guesstimating. This is me thinking 3 full more recruiting classes, 3 years of facility upgrades, 3 more years of engagement from the fans, 3 more years of hype, and 3 more years of recruiting classes, whether it be the transfer portal or out of high school. I think that Coach Prime could put out a team that would hold its own and do well against North Dakota State. But right now, once again, we're talking about 3 years from now. And as long as North Dakota State is dominant and Jackson State is doing what they're doing as far as engagement via social media and putting a hell of a product out there on the field while also winning crazy recruiting battles they not supposed to be winning, according to a lot of people, this conversation is always going to be brought up. But right now, there's no benefit to Jackson State playing North Dakota State. There isn't. Because if you do everything that you're supposed to do, being Jackson State, in their world that they play football in, that means if you go undefeated in the SWAC, you go undefeated in your out-of-conference games, you win the SWAC East, you win the SWAC championship, you go to the Celebration Bowl. You don't go to the FCS playoffs. So you never cross paths with North Dakota State in any shape, form, or fashion. If you do what you're supposed to do, if you do what you're projected to do. And so by saying that, going up to Fargo, North Dakota, what does that prove? It proves, it can put you in a perennial power as an FCS program. But if you lose that game, what does it do? Losing the game does more hurt and detriment to your brand, to what you're building, to your momentum, to your hype, than going up there and winning the game does. I want you to hear me what I have to say. For Jackson State, losing a game to North Dakota State does more detriment and does more hurt to your brand, to what you're building, to your momentum, than going up to Fargo and winning the game. Winning the game, for a lot of people, you're doing what you're supposed to do when you bring in recruiting classes that they've been able to bring in, when you bring in the type of talent and players that they've been able to bring in. But if you lose, which you could lose, like I'm not putting it past JSU losing to North Dakota State, especially right now. Now, 3 years from now, that's different. But right now, they'd probably lose, and it would do more detriment. You would have more negative headlines on ESPN, on Fox Sports, on podcasts like myself and Blue and Offscript and CFL than you would, more negative headlines, that is, than you would positive headlines if you went up to Fargo and beat them. And if you went up to Fargo and beat them, and I think Blue, I want to say, tweeted out North Dakota State's record against FBS programs recently. It's pretty freaking good. It's pretty freaking good. I mean, it is like absurdly good, like highly impressive to what they've been able to do. This is what Blue tweeted out earlier, because I saw this and I was like, "Woo, oh my God, these dudes are sick." It says, this is not surprising anyone when you consider that North Dakota State is 6-0 since 2010 against FBS teams. That means teams with the 85 scholarships, not 63, including multiple top 25 teams, and have outscored those opponents 146-83 in those matchups. This is not a run-of-the-mill program. This is a high-level, very much established, churning out NFL players type of program that has been running on all cylinders since at least 2010. A program that has been running on all cylinders since at least 2010. So that means 12 years of sustained excellence. Prime's been at Jackson State for 2. You get what I'm saying? 12 years of sustained excellence matching up against 2. Now, by 2025, it's a different ballgame. But as some of you believe, Prime will be gone by then. That's what trap music is telling me. That's what other folks also believe. He's not the only one with this mindset. He's not the only one that thinks like this. And so, therefore, I'm saying there's no benefit in this moment. Now, when you have established a better culture, you have been dominant. Say if you get to the point where you're dominant over SWAC schools or HBCU opponents, then that makes more sense. Tennessee State, it makes a whole lot of sense for them to schedule these games because they're trying to garner excitement. They're trying to get people excited about what they're building. Prime's already done that. The excitement's already there. The excitement is so much there that any and every time that big time programs and big time games, whether it be FBS or FCS, is brought up, they bring up Jackson State. Folks is out there asking the man about Alabama. Ask the man about Alabama. Every time North Dakota State schedules a big time opponent, following right behind that from some of the leaders in the FCS community as far as reporters and stuff, they ask about Jackson State. Jackson State's brought up. Now, Blue brings up the head coach is only in year 4. Yes, that's true. But a culture was set even before he got there. The culture, the pipeline was set already. You're talking about guys that have gone top 3 in the draft. Jackson State just had a guy drafted for the first time in a while, and he went in like the 6th. James Houston went in the 6th round, 5th round, 6th round. North Dakota State in the last 10 years had 2 quarterbacks, less than that. Had 2 quarterbacks in the last 6 years. Had one Wentz get drafted in like the 16th draft. So in the last 10 years, they've had 2 quarterbacks go in the top 3. Jackson State just had a guy go 6th round. North Dakota State has had 2 quarterbacks go in the top 3 of the draft. Had another receiver, Christian Watson, this year go in the 2nd round. He's like the first or second pick of the second round. This culture, this program is established. They're churning out NFL players, like high-level NFL players. Like, so you get what I'm saying? Like top of the top, going at the top of the draft, NFL players. So that culture, that program is established. And they have everything to gain from beating a team like Jackson State, who gets more media coverage than them, who gets talked about basically more than most FBS programs. Jackson State gets talked about more than most FBS programs simply because who they are, as far as the the school with the history and who their coach is, and the players they've been able to bring in. Between Travis Hunter, Coach Prime being the coach, and their stadium being able to seat 60,000 people, Jackson State gets talked about more than most FBS programs. So North Dakota State would gain tremendously from not only beating JSU. If they got a chance, they would try to hang 60 on JSU. I'm not saying that they could, but they would most certainly try. They wouldn't try to just beat JSU. They would try to embarrass Jackson State, especially if they came to Fargo. Especially if they came up to the Fargo Dome. So that's what I'm saying. That is why it makes sense for a program like Tennessee State, who is building, who is looking to garner momentum, both not only on the field, because they're going to put out a product on the field, I think, this year that is is going to shock a lot of people, but also garner some momentum, also garner some acknowledgement from the public at large. And that's huge. That matters. That kind of stuff matters. Now, Blue got an interesting comment. Says they have an average budget in FCS, less resources than a lot of top FCS programs. They're only saying they FBS because they speak. Oh no. I'm saying no. I don't know. I don't know if you're referring to, Jackson State or North Dakota State. Now, North Dakota State is the truth. Like but establishing a culture and building upon something and continuing that is critical. And that's something major that they've been able to do. But to act like they haven't been a premier team in FCS for football for a long time, I don't think anybody's doing that. Ain't nobody's taking away what they are. They beat Jackson State by 2 touchdowns right now. I'm not saying that would, but in 3 years, I think it might be a different game. And we have to say in 3 years because they don't have an opening until 2025. Remember, these schedules are made years in advance. Their next opening isn't until 2025. I think this is a completely different JSU program in 2025 as opposed to it is in 2022. That's just me. Now, whether you think Prime is going to be there in 2025 or not, that is a different debate. But I think, this is something that is going to continue to come up. This is a conversation that's continued to be had. Every time you see North Dakota State spanking the hell out of somebody or winning another championship or playing these big-time non-conference games, whether it be against FCS programs or elite FCS programs, you're going to hear shortly behind that because of what they're doing down there at 1400 Lynch Street is when is Jackson State going to step up to the plate? Now, the soonest that they can do it is 2025. We've already established that. North Dakota State's schedule is set for 22, 3, and 4 now. The soonest they can do is 2025. I think this is something we could be talking about getting scheduled, but right now it just has to make sense. And for JSU, as of right now, it never really made sense. It never really made sense as far as because you would lose more. It would do more detriment losing than the gain you would get from winning. Like you just have to look at it from that perspective. If you're Jackson State, what do you get? You get bragging rights, and you get to say, "Hey, if we would opt for the playoff, if we lost in the SWAC and got to go to the playoff, say if you beat North Dakota State, you would say, hey, okay, because if all else goes the way you plan it to go, you clinch your spot in the Celebration Bowl. That is the SWAC schools, the MEAC schools' ultimate goal. Whether you think that's right or not is a different debate. Whether you think they should, be eligible for the Celebration Bowl in the FCS playoff, that's a different debate. But right now, their ultimate goal is to win every game on their schedule, win their conference championship, whether it be the MEAC or the SWAC, and then win the Celebration Bowl. They don't get to fight for an FCS playoff championship like North Dakota State does. Their ultimate goal is to win their conference and then go on and win the FCS championship. Those are two different goals. And so you would do more hurt to yourself by going up to Fargo, playing that game, and then losing. Because the chances are, as of currently constructed, as you continue to build your culture and they have an established culture, you'd probably lose the game. Now, by 2025, that's different. That is different. So that is something to watch. But shout out to Coach Eddie George, who in the Tennessee State Tigers program, who ain't ducking no smoke. They ain't ducking that. They're gonna go play Notre Dame up at Notre Dame next year. You know how those results happen. You know they're gonna be what they are. And then the 2 years after that, according to the reports, they're gonna play the best of the best in the FCS, and that is North Dakota State. And I clap it up. I applaud them because they have everything to gain. They have nothing to lose because if they lose the game, they're supposed to lose the game. They have everything to gain. They help their chances for the FCS playoff. They help their bid as far as being one of the premier programs in FCS. They do all of those things. They have everything to gain. They get people to come to Nissan Stadium when it's hard for them right now. They ain't getting a whole lot of people at Nissan Stadium at Tennessee State games. If you don't know if you heard, but their attendance is lacking. People will show up for that game. They'll come to Nissan Stadium to watch them play against North Dakota State. So they have everything to gain. Jackson State, as of 2022, not so much. And so we will see. We will see. Especially with the dissolving of the Southern Heritage Classic. That's one less big-time game that Tennessee State fans have to look forward to, since that looks like it's dissolving. It's going away. And so why not? You already given them a chance to road trip and go up to South Bend in Notre Dame in 23. And so why not in 24 and 25 give them a big-time game to play against North Dakota State, both 1 year in Fargo and the next year in Nashville. So let me read some of your comments. The JSU have to test their mental. I agree, but I think that it's coming. I think that is coming. I think they will soon enough. But Prime is slow playing this, and he has every right to. Why wouldn't you slow play it? Like, why would you? I mean, I get it. Some people say, hey, just jump into the fire. And for some folks, for some programs, that works. And that works tremendously well for South Carolina State. They just jump into the fire. They play Clemson every year. They probably play like 2 FBS teams every single year. And that, in turn, has helped them get a lot of guys drafted. Like, a whole lot of guys have been drafted at South Carolina State because of some of the money games or some of the big-time games that they played and as a team probably wasn't ready for. But a Jim, a Jacoby Durant, Hargrave, Darius Leonard, or whoever stood out in those games and got them drafted or got them an opportunity at the next level that they then capitalized on and become great players, professional players. Well, Prime isn't looking at it that way. He's slow playing it. He's slow balling it. He's, playing the games, whether you call them cupcakes or whatever, playing the games on the schedule, scheduling still some good teams. A Campbell squad led by Coach Mentor, who I think is going to be really good. They're going to be really good this year, but I think even better by 23. And I don't know if Prime and them are going to play them in 23, but they're playing them in 22. And I think they're going to be even better in 23 if they don't lose Coach Mentor. Hopefully, somebody going to see what he's doing and they might try to snatch him up. But that's neither here nor there. But why not slow play it when you get a chance? Why not take it slow? Why not continue to build your program so therefore by the time your quarterback is a junior and a senior, you are playing some of the better teams across the FCS. You are playing out-of-conference games that don't feature conference opponents. And that's another thing the SWAC does. They play out-of-conference games against conference opponents. They just don't go towards the conference record. And that, to me, is the silliest stuff I've ever seen. I'm not even going to lie. I get it. You don't want to lose some of your rival games. And now that your league have went from 10 schools to 12 schools, you kind of got to do some funky stuff to keep some of your rivalries, whether it's Southern. I think this year they're playing a non-conference game against Grambling. I get it. There's a big-time rivals. But don't schedule conference opponents for out-of-conference games. I don't like that. I'm going to just be honest. I'm not a fan of that, but that is what it is. Let me look at some of your other comments. Okay, I would like to see JSU play a regional FCS pro powerhouse. Like who? Are you thinking of North Carolina A&T? Because I would love to see that. I would love to see Jack. I mean, that's a short trip. Jackson State now gets chartered flights, so I mean, they don't got to worry about trips anymore. But it's a short trip from Mississippi to North Carolina. You get up there, you play yourself against one of the best teams in the FCS, against a team that used to dominate in the Celebration Bowl, used to dominate the MEAC. Why not? North Carolina A&T, I'd love to see that matchup. I would love to see JSU play that game. And, people are going to show up for it. North Carolina A&T has a huge alumni base. They have fans that travel. They have fans that will go to a game, and they have fans that legit think that they're better than all the teams in the SWAC still. When they played against the SWAC schools, they used to dominate them, so they still feel like they can still beat them. Ain't nothing changed about their mindset in a few years. They ain't been in the MEAC in a couple of years, but ain't nothing changed. They still think they would go and run the MEAC, and they still think they'd run the hell out of the SWAC, and I don't see why not. I don't see why they wouldn't think like that, because the last I checked, they were pretty dominant when they played those games. So I would love to see it. That would be my ode to Prime. It's like, hey, whatever you got to do, schedule the Aggies, schedule A&T. That would be my pitch. Whether it's scheduling A&T or that would be, since they're not in the MEAC, you ain't got to do a SWAC MEAC challenge. It could be an out of conference game at the beginning of the year, a home and home series that would sell out. That would sell out because A&T fans obviously think they're better than Jackson State. They think they're better than the teams in the SWAC and the MEAC. JSU feels like they're going to go out and dominate everybody. Why not make it happen? That is my pitch. But hope you understand. Once again, my name is JeffLightsyJr with the Black Boss Channel and Victory Formation. And you understand why Tennessee State would take a game against North Dakota State and why JSU simply wouldn't at this moment. Because Tennessee State has everything to gain and JSU has everything to lose. I hope you better understand that. Shout out to you guys for tuning in live. Hit that thumbs up button. Also, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at JLightsy7. That is on Instagram and Twitter at JLightsy7. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I will see you next time. Peace.